Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Savage podcast. This is episode 3 of the Savagery one-on-one series we did, and just to do a quick recap, and I'm going to link it to our YouTube video. Again, when I say links, just so everybody knows, if you go on YouTube, they're typically linked on the top. They directly take you to the other videos. I'm still figuring out to do it on the actual podcast, other than just putting the link in the description. There's got to be a better way, so I'll figure it out. But anyways, the first one we did was about self-defense and martial arts and how to find the right style and the right school for you. The second one was about the tactical side of things. So anything from firearms to any ancillary skills that I think any savage out there today should know. And today we're going to talk about the third element, and that is fitness and conditioning. With no further ado, let's get into the episode. So yeah, what can I say? We discussed fitness many times because I sincerely believe that is the basis of everything else. You can train martial arts all you want and you can be a wonderful operator of a firearm, but if you do not have the stamina, you will not be able to stand a fight, and you probably will be, as we always say, more of a liability than an asset to those you're trying to protect, better being yourself, your family, your community, whatever that is. So everything comes down to fitness. And I'm actually going to tell you probably the most recent example. I just got back actually about 4 hours ago, drove overnight back from Alabama, where I was teaching rifle class this weekend. And great group of people. Everybody was there to learn. Everybody was super motivated, but a few of the individuals in the class were not in the best shape, and it showed. They couldn't run certain evolutions. They couldn't get into certain positions like kneeling and so forth. And if you cannot do all of that, you can spend all the money you want on a wonderful firearm with great optics and accessories and pay good money to come take classes and travel and hotels and everything that goes with it. But ultimately, when shit hits the fan, you won't be able to execute those skills because you lack the fitness element, the conditioning, the range of motion, the basics that you need in order to actually utilize those skills. And when I talk about Savagery one-on-one, it's not always just a gunfight. We mentioned in prior episodes the ability to help a loved one. If I, God forbid, have a loved one that is stuck in a vehicle after a car accident or in a house, in a fire, whatever it is, right? It doesn't have to be that World War III zombies are coming type thing. It can be a natural disaster. It can be just an everyday event. Do you have what it takes to actually carry them, move them to safety, and do what needs to be done at that point? The amount of fitness that will require is a lot higher than what people give it credit for. I have a friend, I'm sure you guys may know, Tony Sempinat, with Real World Tactical. I'm going to give him props. Tony came to Maryland at one point to teach a class for Maryland Tactical Officers Association Conference, and he brought with him sleds and barbells and all kind of stuff. And his philosophy was simple, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. What he said is, listen, you're going to get into that fight and you're going to win the fight because your tactics are going to kick in, your training is going to kick in, you're going to do the bare minimum to survive it. But what shape are you in at the end of the fight is a direct result of your fitness. Are you just a ragged piece of shit because you can't move, because you exhausted any ounce of energy you had? Or are you still primed and ready to keep going if you need to? Just because you won one fight doesn't mean the event is over. There may be more threats that you need to address. There's a whole follow-up to an event that needs to be taken care of from a medical standpoint, to just maintaining mental clarity in order to document things and report them correctly and communicate. So that is directly a result of your fitness. So anything you do in life, even if it's just being a business person, just sitting in an office, requires stamina. Your ability to focus is a direct result of your stamina and your fitness. If I do not have the ability to maintain certain posture for a while, I won't be able to maintain my mental acuity. I won't be able to maintain my focus, and then I'm going to be suboptimal on everything else I'm doing. So from your relationship to your business to certainly your savagery, it's a direct result of your fitness and conditioning. So I break down fitness and conditioning really to 5 elements, and all of them are important, and you guys need to pick which one is applicable to you to what extent. So you got to address them all. You can't eliminate one or the other. You have to have them all in your program, but how or to what extent really depends on your individual goals, right? So we're going to talk about it as we go through it. The first two are actually not fitness specific, But without these two, nothing else will fall into place. And those are nutrition and rest. So nutrition is self-explanatory. If you eat shit, you're gonna look like shit, you're gonna feel like shit, you're gonna operate like shit. So if your diet consists of McDonald's every day and soda and I don't know, a lot of coffee and a lot of beer, then probably you are not firing on full cylinders. It's kind of like trying to run a sports car on shitty fuel. So the idea is you need to start taking stock of what you are putting into your body. What fuel are you putting in there? And the easiest way for you to go about it is, I'm gonna give you 2 tips. I'm not a registered dietitian, so I'm not allowed to actually write you diet, but I can give you some general guidelines. And these are the 2 that I always tell my clients and my coaching groups to follow. One is tracking. Take a week and just write down everything you eat. You'll be amazed to see 2 things happening. One of them, you'll become aware of all the stuff that you're putting in your body that you probably shouldn't, just by having to record it if you're truly honest with yourself. The second thing is you're gonna start to self-moderate. So you're gonna figure out, okay, well, I gotta record this down and I'm about to eat that double cheeseburger, but I don't want it really recorded, so maybe I shouldn't eat it. And you're already gonna start making small adjustments to your daily nutritional habits just by having to record it. So start by recording everything and really get a true picture of where you are and what you're eating, where you're not eating, how much water are you consuming, how much protein are you taking in, how much food is actually natural and really has the nutrients that you need, and how much of it is just junk that's just filling you temporarily, but really over the longer period of time, it's probably causing more health issues, more damage, and certainly does not support your goals. So number 1 is tracking. Number 2, as far as actually writing a nutritional plan, the only thing I'm gonna say is this: prioritize proteins. Okay, I am not a big fan of any extreme, the low carbs, low fat, any paleo diets, anything that eliminates food groups altogether. I'm personally not a big fan of. It never worked for me. May work for you, and by all means, again, if you work with a dietitian, follow what they're saying. But in my mind, when you start eliminating groups as a whole, then the fun kind of goes out of it and people tend to not stick to it. So rather than restricting element, I'm just prioritizing the thing that's important to me. In my case, it's protein. I know there's a certain amount of protein I want, an amount I want to eat a day. In my case, it is 160 grams of protein a day. So as I prioritize that throughout the day, as I make my meals, as I go out and eat in restaurants, because I don't stop eating out or not hanging out with friends and stuff just because I want to watch what I'm eating. I am just making healthier choices when I'm there. So I'm going to go and pick those foods that are in protein, those the chicken, the steak, the eggs. I'm going to get those in first, and everything else is going to augment it. If I try to get that 160 grams of protein a day, I find that everything else tends to fall into place. Maybe a little bit high on carbs some days, maybe a little bit less. Remember, protein is more saturating, so the more protein you have, the more full you feel, so you're less likely to eat other things. And again, there's nothing wrong with carbs. It is an available fuel to your body, so you certainly want to get that. Don't eliminate fruits. Nobody ever got fat or obese just on fruits. Okay, because everybody says, well, it's sugar. I don't want to get sugar. Like, no, it also has a lot of vitamins and minerals that you do want to consume. So again, if you prioritize protein and just augment with everything else, including fat, you're going to end up making healthier decisions, healthier choices, and you're going to see that body composition change. So first thing is nutrition. Second thing is rest. It's as basic as this. You tear your body down when you work out, and that body needs to rebuild itself. Those micro tears in your tissue need to rebuild themselves, and they do it while you rest, while you sleep. So that's where the nutrients come in, right? If I don't get the protein I don't have the building blocks to build those muscles, but I need to allow my body the time to do so. If I continually work a muscle and I don't let it recover, those micro tears are going to increase, and then eventually I'm going to get into what's called overtraining, where I'm actually going to injure myself rather than get the benefits I'm looking for, i.e. stronger, healthier, better endurance of my muscles. So that all happens over rest, not to mention that your cognitive function improves over rest. Everything really improves. I spoke about it in length in the past. I had major issues with sleep for a while. Did a lot of supplementation, natural supplementation, things like glycine, herbs like holy basil, just to help me kind of control my thoughts. My brain races at night. Meditation helped me a lot, but really prioritizing rest and sleep, it becomes important. For me, the sweet spot is about 7 hours. Less than 7 hours, like I did last night, is not great. If I get too much, if I get way more than 7 hours, like I try to some weekends, actually that backfires because I get what's called sleep inertia, where I just sluggish and tired the rest of the day because I actually got too much sleep. But find what that number is for you. At what point do you wake up and you feel energized, you feel ready to go, you don't feel tired, and you're really getting the maximum results from that rest and sleep period. So prioritize that. People, the whole idea of I'm going to sleep when I die, that we all have as alphas, right? I've done that for many, many years. I said, I don't need to rest. I'm going to sleep when I die. The reality is, if you don't sleep, you will die a lot sooner than you expect. So prioritize that. Super important. So those are the two kind of ancillary things to fitness and conditioning. But if I don't have those two, anything I'm going to do on the fitness side is going to be a moot point. When it comes to actual training, so the three additional variables, remember I said there's five. We talk about nutrition, we talk about rest. The other three are endurance training, strength training, and range of motion training. And I need all three. And again, to what extent you need each one of them really depends on your goals. If you are an endurance athlete, then obviously concentrating on endurance is more important than concentrating on the strength element, although you still need the strength because they do play together to some extent. If I am a bodybuilder, then maybe I'm concentrating on strength and less on the endurance element. But again, I need some of that as well. So you always got to maintain the balance. You need all three, but to what extent really depends on your individual goals. So we talk about endurance, we talk about cardiovascular training. Cardiovascular meaning your heart, your lungs, and your vascular system, so your blood moving along your body. So how efficient is it doing that? How efficient am I delivering blood, i.e. oxygen, into the cells to maintain longer, what we call aerobic capacity. So I'll say this, I find the best result for myself when I run from a body composition standpoint. I can bike, I can row, I can rock, I can do a bunch of things, and they're all great. But if I truly want to see changes in my body composition historically over the past 30 years, the one thing that did it the best for me is running. I will say running sucks. I don't enjoy it particularly, not to say that the chances of injury are higher, especially as you increase the loads, being the distance or the time. It's a lot of impact on the body. So what I tell most people, unless your sport or your goals directly require running, you probably don't have to run as much. For me, that seemed to work, but I'd be the first one to admit it is not the best approach to everybody. My endurance training actually has three elements to it. One of them is a long run. I try to go for distance and for time. The other one is sprints. So I do short burst interval training, high intensity, and then recovering. I do about 10 of those in every such workout. And the third one is a low intensity but long duration training. So perfect example is rocking. I put a backpack with about 25, 30 pounds in it, and I go for a walk. I challenge myself on the walk. Typically it's hilly and so forth, but I'm not getting my heart rate to those high maxes that it would when I do the sprints, for example. So it works slightly different, and I hope that by incorporating the three different types of training, of cardiovascular training, I'm getting the endurance, the fitness, the stamina that I need to support my goals as a tactician. So that's what I'm training towards, right? And again, remember, you got to gear your training to what your goal is. The second thing is strength. Again, strength comes in a variety of ways. Am I talking about muscle endurance, where I'm going lower weights, high repetition, and I'm going for mass, where I'm going mid-range on repetitions and slightly heavier weights? Or am I going for pure strength and power, where I'm going super low repetition, super heavy weights? And again, it depends on your goals. A lot of great approaches there. I wish I could get more into what actually, how to build a program, but it's super individual, and I've tried doing it in the past in prior podcasts and conversation and posts. But the reality is that there are no two individuals that will require the same approach. What works for me may not necessarily work for you, from a goal standpoint, but also just because we build different, right? Our body responds different to different stimulus, and there's a lot of trial and error involved, and you need to know what works for you. If you want more information, if you want an individual program written for you, by all means, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to support and help you. Just can't get into it in this podcast to the extent that we would like. Just know that you need to incorporate some sort of strength training. You need to work all the major muscle groups. So think multi-joint movements as your primary. And if you think your goals or your sport or your mission requires some single joint motions as well, do those. For those that are not familiar, to give an example, if I do a chest press, for example, moving shoulder, elbows, that's a multi-joint motion. So it incorporates more than just my pecs, includes my triceps, my delts, a lot of ancillary muscles. But if I do a fly, I'm only moving my shoulder. That is more of an isolation movement, single joint, where I'm concentrating truly on my pec because I don't have an elbow extension, so my triceps don't get involved to the same extent. There's no way of truly isolating them. There's always going to be multiple muscles incorporated for no other reason than as what we call as a stabilizer or secondary muscles, but the ratio certainly changes between multi-joint and single joint. So concentrate on the multi-joint because that's just functionally how we all operate. If you think about it day to day, if I was to punch, right, that's a chest press, right? I'm using my pec, I'm using my shoulder, I'm using my elbow. So that is a multi-joint. So if I do bench presses, the hope is that that will translate to some extent to a stronger punch as well. Now understand the explosiveness, okay, is a different element. So if your sport requires, or your mission, again I keep saying sport because I'm so used to working with athletes, but from an operator standpoint, military, law enforcement, first responder, or just a protector at home, right? Remember Savagery. So if you need to do something that's explosive in nature, understand I can mimic it on a machine at the gym. I need to find movements that allow me to get that release at the end. So we call that plyometrics. So think the difference between doing a leg press and doing a jump squat. I'm working the same muscle groups as far as my quads, my hamstrings, my glutes, right, knee extensions and hip extensions, but one of them I have to decelerate at the end to come to a stop. The other one I can get a full release on that jump, for example. So if my mission requires me to be more explosive, then I want to incorporate those types of movements into my routine as well. Think about things that became popular with CrossFit like wall balls, right, where I throw a ball up. If you need to do anything that will require that release on that upper body push motion, then that is a good example of something that I can incorporate into my workout using spree bands or resistant bands are another way to incorporate that. First of all, the explosive motion, but also the variable resistance, because as you push or pull through that band, depending on the angle and the motion you're doing, that resistance increases. So at the peak of the motion, there's a higher resistance than there would be at the beginning of the motion. So there's a lot of little tricks. That's why I can't get into too much in this podcast, but just make sure that you address your specific needs. So again, we talked about endurance, we talked about strength. So the third one is range of motion. I don't call it flexibility or stretching necessarily. I call it range of motion because, again, there is a difference in definition. One of them allows me to control my body in certain ways. Flexibility is actually defined, if we look at the official scientific definition, as the ability to exert strength through a range of motion. So it's not enough for me to just do a split, but can I actually exert strength throughout that range of motion? So range of motion is a component of flexibility, but it's not necessarily the same. So for me, again, I am not a ballerina, I'm not a gymnast, I don't care about doing splits. It would be cool just from, because if I want to ever do the Jean-Claude Van Damme, one leg on one car and one leg on the other one and hold that split, that would be pretty cool. But at 48, almost 49 years old, I think I'm a little too late for that party. So one of those things that probably will never happen. But there are other things that I want to be able to do in the sense of longevity, especially because I train so much on the strength and endurance. If I don't stretch those muscles, if I don't maintain that range of motion, as those muscles get tighter, I'm going to lose it. So simple things like tying my shoelaces may become cumbersome if I cannot reach forward, if I cannot cross a leg over the other one. So that is where my range of motion is, my concentration these days. And again, you have to make sure that you drive your stretching element to support your goals. So if you are, let's say, a combat athlete, so you're MMA, any kind of martial arts, and so forth, you want to make sure that you maintain range of motion in your shoulder girdle, right, around your torque, and certainly hamstrings if you're a kicker, and so forth. So including stretches and mobility exercises. So it's not just stretching, right? It's just working through ranges of motion at different angles that becomes super important. And when people neglect that element, that is when injuries start to happen, because you're increasing the loads, increasing the intensity, but your muscles are not capable of supporting it through the full range of motion. That's why when I go to the gym sometimes and I see people do partial leg extensions, So leg extensions, first of all, it's an isolation movement. I like it because I like the way my quads look. So it's more of a vanity thing. But from a functional standpoint, I can't think of one movement where I just sit there and raise my foot forward as part of an everyday activity. It's usually incorporated as part of a compound movement, right? Sitting up from a chair, stuff like that. So leg extension from a functional standpoint, probably not the most efficient exercise, but I still enjoy doing it myself. But when I see people at the gym doing partial range of motion, they do like 2/3 of the way. They don't go all the way up and they don't go all the way to a full, bringing the heel as far back as they can. They're really missing of parts of the exercise. First of all, your muscle only gets strong in the range of motion in which you work it. So if you work that partial range of motion and one day, for whatever reason, you do have to come up from a low squat and now you're doing a knee extension from a much longer range motion, the chances of injury is a lot higher because your muscle never got strong in those elements or those extreme hands of the range of motion that you did not train earlier in the gym, right? So that is one. If you went right now and extended your knee almost all the way, you'll notice that the muscles at the bottom of your quads, right, your vastus medialis obliques and your vastus lateralis, don't have to get into the technical terms, actually are not as tight. You like that knee out, that is when you feel those muscles tightening. So you're actually not even working all the muscles to full capacity if you're not getting that full range of motion. Now people say, well, I had knee injury and I'm not supposed to. I'm like, I'm not a doctor. I'm certainly not an orthopedic doctor, but I would say that's bullshit. Lower the weights and concentrate on range of motion. So before you think about, oh, I want to move the full stack of weights, I'm like, how about you work on going through the full range of motion and then focus on the weights? Think about it this way, when you go to physical therapy, do they concentrate on the weights? No, they concentrate on the range of motion. They just want to get you moving through the full plane that joint is capable of going. So that's really what you should be concentrating on if you're thinking longevity. If you're not going to do the full range of motion, your chance of injury actually increases. You're being inefficient and it's a waste, right? So I'm a big fan of working through full ranges of motion whenever possible. Again, obviously, if you have a physical limitation that doesn't allow you, then have that checked, have that look, talk to a professional. But if you can't, you can't. I mean, that's part of the thing about fitness, right? And the beauty is nowadays with all the machines we have and all the different training programs that are available out there, there's something for everybody. You just have to find your way. I've mentioned in the past, I have a lot of personal issues with CrossFit. I think CrossFit was great in the sense of introducing fitness to the masses. I think they did a phenomenal job at that. I'll give them a lot of credit. My issue with CrossFit becomes when I have people, or I see people go through a weekend course and all of a sudden the CrossFit coaches trying to teach complex moves like Olympic lifts, which people take years to master. And this is when we see injuries happen because you cannot become proficient, certainly not in teaching it, in a weekend. And that's why you see all these people that do CrossFit with KT tape, the medical tape, all over their body because they have so many injuries. But the nice thing about it is they introduce fitness as a possibility to everybody. Everything can be adjusted. There is something for you if you are a 5-year-old or if you're 90-year-olds and if you have this disability or that disability, or if your goal is to be a SWAT operator, or if your goal is to be a soccer mom. There is something for everybody. And I give CrossFit a lot of credit to bringing that at least to the forefront. Now it's up to you as the end user to figure out what is it that is best for me. I will throw one more thing out to kind of bringing those three elements together. So the three elements of savagery, again, we talked about self-defense and martial arts, talk about the tactical element, and then we talk about fitness and conditioning. If I can combine all three, I'm that much better off. Because ultimately, it's not going to be isolated. It's not going to be I either fight or I either shoot or I either have to maintain my stamina and my conditioning. Typically, God forbid, there's an event, all three of them are going to come into play. You're going to be in a fight that will require you to exert force and strength and maintain stamina while you're maintaining a skill set, and then potentially think the global tactical element, points of cover and concealment, where are my loved ones, do I need to transition to a firearm, do I need to render medical aid? There's a lot that goes around it. And if you can find a program that incorporates all three, then you are so far ahead of the curve. Okay, so a lot of people refer to it as hybrid training. There are not a lot of places that offer hybrid training, though, in the sense that I refer to it. So a little shameless plug, I don't do this often, but you certainly, if you're in Maryland, come and check our Havoc classes at Masada in Savannah Park, Maryland, where we do exactly that. People come with their firearms. Obviously, we make sure everything is safe and clear. We use laser markers using the Mantis system. If you are an operator and you have a kit, bring that as well. If you're not an operator and you just want the bulk and the weight, you can use that also. And then it's typically a circuit type exercise or routine, but it's done with the gear where you follow each movement with a presentation of the firearm, manipulating it, maybe putting a tourniquet to yourself or somebody else, carrying a person. And now we're incorporating all those elements together. Another class we offer is called Mayhem, which is a self-defense class designed for those that carry concealed. So if you, for example, are addressing a choke and from a level of force standpoint, you understand this is a deadly situation, I have a gun on me and I should be able to introduce it to the fight, then how do you do that effectively? How do you create the space you need? How do you come up with the decision-making processes? So again, it's people sometimes, I would say, set themselves up for failure if they focus on one element out of the three or isolate those elements and never combine them. Because at the end of the day, real life is not an isolated event. There is all of them happening at the same time. And we need to train that way. That's the only way we can truly prepare for the real world. So if you're interested in coming and trying a class, certainly come as my guest. If you are remotely and you're interested in more information, we do offer licensing and instructor certifications in those. So reach out as well. And that's it. So we covered Savagery one-on-one, and those are the three elements. Again, talking about self-defense or martial arts. Again, whatever you choose, whatever fits your needs and fills your bucket is great. We talk about a tactical element. Firearms obviously being a major component, but if you don't have a firearm, don't want a firearm, there's other things to it, such as the general survival skills and certainly the medical element, being able to render aid when needed. And last but not least, fitness and conditioning, which if I don't have, then none of the other two are going to matter anyways. So as you go about your life from this point on, you need to figure out a way to make yourself better. At the end of the day, when God forbid something happens, are you a liability or are you an asset to yourself, your loved ones, your community, and so forth? So take it seriously, guys. This is not an option. This is an absolute must if you want to be at peak condition. And again, it's not just for being a savage and a protector. Everything in life will benefit from it. Better discipline, better stamina will literally translate to being better at work, being better in your social life. Everything is going to improve. So take that to heart and take the necessary steps as always. And as I mentioned through the last 3 episodes, feel free to reach out to me. I am a resource, always am a resource. Send me a direct message. A few people this past week, coincidentally enough, sent me messages about training routines and stretching routines, and I'll be more than happy to support and help. So send that to me and I'll be more than happy to assist. And regardless, as always, make sure to follow, subscribe, share this with other people. That's how we grow and share the gospel. And I will leave you with one last little teaser. I don't know if next week, but certainly by the following one, we have a few cool guests coming. Coincidentally enough, several of them come from the Savagery fitness and conditioning world, so it's going to be interesting to talk to them. And the third one is more from the working with veterans, specific PTSD, and talk about breathing exercise and so forth. So you're going to see all of that coming in, always with the aim of helping you be better. So until next time, stay savage.